What happens when a peaceful night of celebration turns into chaos? Picture a crowd gathered in Queens celebrating and honoring a loved one, when suddenly the air is pierced by the sound of gunfire. In an instant, 10 people are left wounded and the gunmen vanish without a trace. Was this a random act of violence, or does it point to something more sinister beneath the surface? Why would someone open fire on an unsuspecting crowd? Was it a calculated, targeted attack, or another tragic example of senseless violence? And who are the perpetrators? What could possibly compel someone to commit such a violent act outside a well-known event space on New Year's Day, no less? But the most pressing question remains, will justice be served? The police are still working tirelessly to piece together the puzzle. The gunmen are still at large, and their motives remain a mystery. With each passing day, the questions grow louder, leaving the Queens community shaken and longing for answers. How could such a horrifying event happen right outside a prominent nightclub? Who are the individuals responsible, and why did they choose this group of people celebrating on New Year's night? As we delve deeper into this unsettling story, we'll uncover everything known so far, from the sequence of events leading up to the shooting to the police investigation that's currently underway. We'll also explore the unanswered questions, the suspects, their motives, and the actions law enforcement is taking to bring them to justice. This is a developing case, and new information could surface at any moment. Stay with us as we closely follow this story. Be sure to subscribe so you won't miss part 2, where we'll bring the latest updates on the manhunt, the evidence, and hopefully some long-awaited answers. Before we continue, there is a need for a disclaimer. This video blends factual details with dramatized elements for storytelling purposes. While inspired by real events and supported by publicly available information, some aspects have been enhanced or imagined to provide a compelling narrative. Names and images may have been changed for privacy or legal reasons, and certain facts may differ from official reports. This is not an official investigation, and we are not affiliated with any investigative bodies. The content is intended to inform and entertain, and we do not condone or promote violence in any form. Viewer discretion is advised. The Amazura nightclub, located in Jamaica, Queens, was a vibrant gathering spot, particularly on weekends. Known for its flashing lights, thumping music, and dynamic energy, it was a destination for young people seeking a night of fun and escape. Situated just off Jamaica Avenue, the venue regularly hosted private events and concerts, drawing large crowds eager to enjoy its lively atmosphere. Inside, the spacious venue buzzed with energy. Friends laughed, took pictures, and sipped drinks while the stage lights illuminated the crowd. As the clock ticked toward midnight, the air was electric with anticipation, a community united in celebration. Outside, smaller groups mingled, enjoying the crisp air and the faint pulse of music from within. It was a moment of joy and connection, a collective hope for the year ahead. Then, in an instant, everything changed. The sound of gunfire pierced the festive atmosphere, sending shockwaves through the crowd. At first, some mistook the noise for celebratory fireworks, but as the shots continued, the truth became horrifyingly clear. Panic erupted. Partygoers ducked for cover, ran toward the exits, or froze in confusion and fear. What had been a carefree celebration turned to a chaotic struggle for safety. By the end of the attack, 10 people, ranging in age from 16 to 20, were injured. The aftermath was devastating. Screams filled the air as victims cried out for help. First responders arrived swiftly, their flashing lights casting a somber glow over the scene. Paramedics worked urgently to stabilize the wounded, while officers secured the area, transforming the once lively venue into a crime scene. Personal belongings lay scattered on the ground, silent reminders of the chaos that had unfolded. Survivors stood outside in shock, some clutching friends, others staring blankly, trying to process the unthinkable. Detectives began gathering accounts from witnesses, but the trauma of the moment left many struggling to recall details. The tragedy at the Amazura nightclub has left the community reeling. Questions linger. Why did this happen? Who were the shooters, and what drove them to such violence? Was this a targeted attack or a senseless act with no discernible motive? As investigators piece together the events of that night, the community remains united in grief and a shared desire for answers. This was not just an attack on individuals, but on the spirit of a neighborhood coming together in celebration. What do you think could drive someone to commit such an act of violence? And how can communities protect spaces meant for joy and connection from being marred by tragedy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The first responders weren't the only ones who faced the aftermath of the shooting. Eyewitnesses, many of them young adults with little experience in such terrifying situations, were left grappling with shock and disbelief. The violence, chaos, and raw fear had unfolded so quickly that comprehending it in the moment was nearly impossible. I was standing by the bar, talking to my friends, when I heard the first shot, shared Kelsey, a 19-year-old college student attending the club with her best friend. It was so loud. I thought it was part of the party, maybe fireworks or something. But then, more shots came. People started screaming and everyone just ran in different directions. I didn't know what was happening. I just knew I had to get out of there. Kelsey's panic reflected the terror of many others. Witnesses described the desperate scramble for exits, dodging past strangers in a frantic bid to survive. The club, once alive with music and celebration, had transformed into chaos in seconds. Outside, one witness, speaking from a nearby parking lot, recounted the horrific scene. I saw people fall, and at first, I thought they'd just been knocked over by the crowd. But then I saw blood. They'd been shot. Some people froze, unsure where to go. I was on the phone with 911, begging them to hurry. It felt like forever before help arrived, said the eyewitness, who chose to remain anonymous for safety reasons. Such harrowing accounts echoed across the community. Moments before, the crowd had been laughing, dancing, and celebrating, but the sound of gunfire turned joy into chaos. Witnesses recalled gunshots in rapid bursts, while others likened them to explosions that shattered the night's peace. "I've never been so scared in my life," said one shaken attendee. The fear hit all at once. You didn't know where to go or what to do. When police and emergency crews finally arrived, the grim reality became evident. Several young people had been injured. The flashing lights of ambulances and police cars illuminated frantic bystanders and victims being carried away on stretchers. For many witnesses, the sight of injured friends and strangers was too much to process. Some wept openly, while others stood in stunned silence. The shooting at Amazura Nightclub sent shockwaves through Jamaica, Queens. For a community celebrated for its vibrancy and togetherness, the violence was devastating. Local businesses, once comforted by the steady stream of partygoers, were now wary. Residents voiced their fears and frustrations, questioning how this tragedy could have happened. "This neighborhood used to feel safe," said Mrs. Green, a 58-year-old resident who witnessed the chaos from her apartment window. "Now, my kids don't even want to go outside. It's just too dangerous." Her sentiments were shared by others. Many questioned the ease with which the shooters had obtained their weapons and whether nightclub security had been sufficient. "I can't believe this happened here," said Malik, a 21-year-old lifelong resident. "People come to this club to relax and have fun. If it can happen here, it can happen anywhere." As the days passed, the community rallied for justice. Memorials were set up for the victims, and local activists organized gatherings demanding accountability. At town hall meetings, leaders emphasized addressing underlying issues like poverty, gang violence, and lack of opportunities, challenges that often go unaddressed in underserved neighborhoods. Meanwhile, families of the victims struggled with unanswered questions. Why were their loved ones, young people with promising futures, caught in such senseless violence? The investigation continues, but the path to healing for this community remains uncertain. What is the cost of a community's silence in the face of rising violence? And how can we as individuals contribute to ensuring that spaces of joy and connection remain safe? Share your thoughts below. In the meantime, let's review what we know so far. The night of January 1st, 2025 was marked by chaos, but as the dust began to settle, the NYPD started piecing together what had unfolded inside the Amazura nightclub. However, it quickly became apparent that this was no ordinary case. Multiple victims, a barrage of gunfire, and the absence of clear suspects at the scene presented significant challenges for investigators. According to the NYPD, 4 suspects were involved in the shooting, and their escape was swift. Witnesses reported seeing the suspects flee in a light-colored sedan, though specific details such as the vehicle's make, model, or license plate remain unconfirmed. Authorities are diligently reviewing nearby traffic camera footage and interviewing anyone who may have seen the suspects leave the nightclub. No arrests have been made, and while detectives are actively pursuing leads, the lack of immediate evidence continues to hinder progress. We're in the early stages of the investigation, NYPD spokesperson Officer Reyes said during a press conference. We are gathering all available footage, speaking with witnesses, and following up on tips. While we have no reason to believe this was a random act of violence, we are not ruling anything out until more information is available. The absence of suspects has heightened tensions within the community, with many fearing that the perpetrators could strike again. As investigators work tirelessly to uncover the truth, speculation about the motives behind the attack has begun to surface. While theories circulate, the NYPD has emphasized their commitment to treating all possibilities with caution and thoroughly examining every lead. Let's delve into a few speculated possible motives. NOS 1. Gang-related crimes. One of the more prominent theories gaining traction is that the shooting could be gang-related. With 4 suspects acting in unison and firing into a crowded area, some detectives have suggested it might be a case of retaliation or a warning between rival groups. We know that certain gangs have a presence in the area, but we're not jumping to conclusions yet, said Detective Inspector Kevin Morris, a senior investigator on the case. We're working through all avenues, including whether or not there is a connection to any gangs operating in this neighborhood. If gang involvement is confirmed, it raises questions about nightclubs like Amazura and their potential role as venues for violent confrontations. Some community members have voiced concerns that businesses attracting large groups of young people might inadvertently become hotspots for gang activity. 2. Random attack. Another circulating theory suggests the shooting may have been a random act of violence. In this scenario, the shooters were simply looking to cause chaos with no specific motive or target in mind. If true, this unsettling possibility highlights the vulnerability of public spaces where people gather to enjoy themselves. Sometimes things just happen. People get into an altercation and one thing leads to another. While plausible, investigators have yet to uncover evidence of any arguments or altercations inside the nightclub that night. Witnesses report that the shooters acted with precision, approaching the crowd, opening fire, and fleeing in the sedan, suggesting a level of coordination inconsistent with a random attack. NAR 3. Targeted attack. Another possibility being explored is whether the attack was aimed at specific individuals. Though no witnesses have reported seeing victims singled out, authorities are considering whether someone in the crowd may have been the intended target. This theory raises further questions. Was this a matter of retaliation, a personal vendetta, or something entirely different? Despite these theories, the NYPD has refrained from confirming or ruling out any specific lines of inquiry, emphasizing that the investigation is ongoing. As days pass without significant breakthroughs, law enforcement has turned to the public for help. During a recent press conference, Officer Reyes urged anyone with information about the suspects or the incident to come forward. We're asking anyone who was at the nightclub that night, anyone who may have seen or heard something unusual, to contact us, Reyes said. Even the smallest detail could help us bring those responsible to justice. A dedicated hotline has been established at 1-800-577-TIPS, and police have distributed flyers around Amazura asking for help identifying the light-colored sedan seen fleeing the scene. Key evidence, such as grainy surveillance images showing the vehicle speeding away, has also been shared with the media. Meanwhile, investigators continue to comb the area, marking shell casings and gathering forensic evidence. While some community members commend the NYPD's efforts, others express frustration over the slow progress, fearing the case may join the ranks of unsolved crimes, leaving victims and their families without justice. A local business owner voiced both concern and determination. This violence isn't just about those people who were hurt. It affects all of us. We need answers, and we need to feel safe in our neighborhood again. The families of the victims wait in anguish for closure. One injured teen, now released from the hospital, shared through a family member, "I'm grateful to be alive, but I'm terrified to even think about going out again." The questions persist. Why did this happen? Was this a targeted message or reckless violence? Most importantly, how can the community prevent such tragedies from happening again? Take a moment to reflect. If someone you loved was caught in this chaos, what would you demand? Not just from the authorities, but from the community as a whole. If you have any information, please call Crime Stoppers at 1-800-577-TIPS. The shooting outside the Amazura nightclub may seem like an isolated tragedy, but when placed against the backdrop of crime patterns in Queens and New York City as a whole, it becomes part of a much larger story, one that reflects growing concerns about public safety, community dynamics, and systemic challenges. In recent years, New York City has seen fluctuating crime rates, particularly involving gun violence. While the city once prided itself on significant reductions in crime over the past 2 decades, the post-pandemic years have brought troubling reversals in certain areas. According to police data, Queens, like other boroughs, has experienced a noticeable uptick in shootings. Jamaica, Queens, a neighborhood known for its vibrant culture and deep historical roots, has faced its own struggles with crime. Gun-related incidents, while not as frequent as in other high-crime areas, have been a persistent issue. Many incidents stem from disputes involving local gangs or interpersonal conflicts that escalate beyond control. A deeper dive into the numbers reveals an unsettling trend. While violent crime remains far below the levels seen in the 1980s and early 1990s, recent years have shown an alarming increase in firearm-related offenses. In Queens, specifically, shootings have risen by nearly 20% compared to 5 years ago, with many victims and suspects being young adults or teenagers. Experts suggest that several factors contribute to this rise. The easy accessibility of firearms, combined with economic pressures and long-standing social issues, creates a volatile environment. Add to that the nightlife scene, where large crowds, alcohol, and personal tensions can create a perfect storm for violence. The Amazura nightclub shooting is a grim reminder of the vulnerabilities that come with nightlife establishments. Event spaces like Amazura, which host large crowds, often become flashpoints for violence despite efforts to maintain security. While many clubs implement measures such as ID checks, metal detectors, and security personnel, the areas outside these establishments are harder to control. Once patrons leave the building, they're often left vulnerable to dangers lurking nearby. The events at Amazura are a chilling example of how quickly celebratory moments can turn into chaos. Some locals have called for stricter regulations on nightlife venues, such as increased police presence during large events or mandatory partnerships with security firms. However, others argue that these measures could stigmatize neighborhoods like Jamaica, further alienating residents and businesses. Gun accessibility remains a contentious issue in discussions about urban violence. In New York City, where gun laws are among the strictest in the country, illegal firearms continue to circulate through underground networks. The light-colored sedan used in the Amazura shooting, for instance, could have transported guns acquired from outside state lines, where regulations are more lax. Investigators are also examining whether gang activity played a role in this incident. Jamaica, Queens, has long been a battleground for rival factions, with disputes over territory and power occasionally spilling into the broader community. While there's no concrete evidence tying the Amazura shooting to gang-related motives, the possibility remains on the table, especially given the calculated nature of the attack. This case is about more than just one night of violence. It's about the broader implications for the safety of all community members. Teenagers heading out to celebrate, parents waiting for their children to come home, and small business owners trying to thrive in neighborhoods grappling with crime. Incidents like the Amazura shooting serve as harsh reminders of the fragility of safety in public spaces. For residents of Jamaica, Queens, this isn't just about seeking justice for the 10 injured individuals. It's about addressing the deeper issues that allowed such a tragedy to occur in the first place. Community leaders have stressed the need for holistic solutions, better access to education and employment opportunities for at-risk youth, stronger community policing strategies, and a united effort to combat the spread of illegal firearms. If violence can erupt so suddenly, even in moments of celebration, what steps can communities take to rebuild trust, ensure safety, and prevent future tragedies? As you consider this question, think about your own neighborhood. What would you demand from leaders, law enforcement, and fellow residents to make public spaces truly safe for everyone? All in all, the aftermath of the shooting has raised a significant question. Do nightlife spaces in NYC need tighter security? Nightclubs like Amazura serve as hubs of celebration, attracting people from all walks of life. But when events like this occur, it calls into question the measures in place to protect patrons. Some argue that additional security, such as police patrols or stricter surveillance outside the venue, could act as deterrents. Others worry about the potential for over-policing or the stigmatization of certain neighborhoods. We want to hear from you. Should nightlife venues take on greater responsibility for public safety, even outside their doors? Could community-driven initiatives like neighborhood watch programs be part of the solution? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Beyond the security debate, the broader issue of gun violence looms large. Tackling this epidemic requires more than just increased police presence. It demands a community-wide effort. We ask you, the viewers, what steps can communities take to prevent tragedies like this? Your suggestions might be simple, like organizing anti-violence workshops or providing more opportunities for at-risk youth. Or they could be systemic, calling for reforms in how illegal firearms are tracked and confiscated. By sharing your ideas, you're contributing to a larger conversation, one that could help create safer spaces for everyone. Finally, as the NYPD continues its investigation, the question on everyone's mind is, what could have motivated such a horrific act? Let's consider the possibilities, knowing these are purely speculative and unconfirmed. Could this have been a planned strike aimed at specific individuals in the crowd? If so, what could the connections be between the suspects and their intended targets? Jamaica, Queens, has seen its share of gang activity. Was this shooting a message, a territorial dispute, or perhaps retaliation for an earlier incident? The randomness of gunfire into a crowd leaves open the chilling possibility that the shooters were indiscriminately aiming to spread terror. Each of these theories brings its own layer of complexity and fear. Was the light-colored sedan seen fleeing the scene a getaway car for seasoned criminals, or was it used by reckless individuals who had no idea of the chaos they'd unleash? Beyond speculating about motives, it's crucial to examine the role of the community in seeking answers and healing. Community members have already come forward, attending vigils and speaking out against gun violence. But the journey toward justice requires more than collective mourning. Here's a question for reflection. If you were in the position of a community leader in Jamaica, Queens, what would you prioritize to address the root causes of violence and build a safer environment? This isn't just about Amazura or even just Jamaica. Across New York City and cities around the globe, communities grapple with similar challenges. By reflecting on these questions, viewers can start to think critically about the actions needed to bring about meaningful change. As this section closes, a final question is posed to the audience. If violence and fear take over our shared spaces, how can communities reclaim them as places of connection, celebration, and safety? Before we move to the next phase of the story, take a moment to consider, what would it take for communities to not just survive such tragedies, but to emerge stronger and more united? As we reach the conclusion of this video, it's clear that the story unfolding in Jamaica, Queens is far from over. The events at the Amazura nightclub have left a community shaken, searching for answers. But the questions we've asked tonight about safety, accountability, and the motives behind this act of violence remain unresolved. The shooting at Amazura wasn't just a crime. It was a moment that tore through the lives of those in the crowd and reverberated across the community. Yet, even as we piece together the fragments of that night, critical questions remain. Who were these shooters? Why did they choose this venue and these victims? Was this act rooted in a deeper conflict, or was it simply chaos unleashed? And most importantly, Will justice be served? These are questions the NYPD continues to work tirelessly to answer. But as time ticks on, the community and the families of the victims are left waiting, their lives put on hold by the uncertainty of the investigation. In the face of this uncertainty, the search for justice becomes not just a legal battle, but an emotional and moral one. The stakes couldn't be higher, not just for the individuals involved, but for everyone who calls Jamaica, Queens, home. This is just the beginning. In Part 2, we'll take you deeper into the investigation. We'll discuss any arrests made in connection with the case and introduce you to the suspects' profiles, unraveling the layers of their lives and their potential involvement in this horrifying act. Together, we'll explore the possible motives, peeling back the curtain on what might have driven someone or several people to open fire on an unsuspecting crowd of young people. Finally, we'll examine the community's response to developments, from relief over progress in the case to lingering fears about safety and accountability. What answers lie hidden within the evidence collected by law enforcement? How will the city come together to seek justice and prevent this from happening again? If you've been following this story and want to stay updated as it unfolds, be sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss Part 2 or the future updates we'll bring you. Share your thoughts and theories in the comments below. What do you think will come to light in the days ahead? Your voice is a vital part of this conversation. Together, as viewers and members of a broader community, we can shine a light on the darkness of this event and ensure the focus remains on finding justice and healing. As we close this chapter, we leave you with this question. What does justice truly look like in the aftermath of a tragedy? Is it simply about finding and punishing the perpetrators, or is it about creating a world where such acts of violence can no longer occur? Take some time to reflect before the next part of this story continues. Justice isn't just about answers, it's about the actions we take moving forward. Are we ready to take those steps? The story of the Amazura nightclub shooting is one that demands answers, justice, and change. As we conclude this chapter, remember, this is not just a story. It's a reflection of the challenges many communities face every day. The investigation continues, and we'll be here to provide you with every critical update, every lead, and every step toward accountability. But until then, stay safe, stay informed, and let's work together to build safer communities. CrimeWire Beyond the Crime Scene. We'll see you in Part 2.